Today is Wednesday, the 1st of February, 2012. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mullican.
I'm Steve Stanley.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 142, Super Bowl week.
That's right. It's Super Bowl week, and every fan in Indianapolis got their wish. A Manning will be in the Super Bowl, and it may be the last time a Manning plays at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Bitterness.
With that said, we'll bring in our guest, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl because he's located near Indianapolis. We want to welcome Reverend Scott Simmons. He's served in youth ministry for over 18 years, and he's currently the director of youth ministries for the Wesleyan Church. He's an ordained minister in the Wesleyan Church and a graduate of Bethany Bible College, now Kingswood University.
Kingswood University, yeah.
That's right. He received his master's of ministry from Indiana Wesleyan University. He's committed to the Wesleyan youth movement, being involved with youth camps, student and adult leadership development, and Wesleyan youth conventions. He's married to his wife, Kelsey, who's also an ordained minister in the Wesleyan Church, and they have 3 daughters, Kayla, Emily, and Brooke. Scott, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. It's good to be on. Thanks for the invite. Good to hang out with all you guys.
We had we wanted you on this week to kind of bookend our conversation we started last week with Matt DePrez, but you were telling us a little bit. We're down here in little old South Carolina, and the biggest event we ever have is a hot air balloon race once a year.
Well, now Clemson used to have a football team.
They used to.
Oh, man. I need to distance myself from these remarks.
I mean, am I not right, Heath? I mean, you were a Clemson fan, right?
ACC champions.
Yeah. The matter of fact, they had a national game.
We went undefeated.
They were in a bowl game this year, weren't they?
We went undefeated at home. This year.
You realize your
but
comments
Scott,
are punishable under the statute. It's blasphemy here.
Anyway, Heath,
Tony, always get me on track. Scott, you guys actually went to the Super Bowl Village last night. Tell us about that, and tell us about an interesting thing you saw that didn't have anything to do with the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was cool. We had some guys in actually for fuel, which I'm sure we'll talk about here soon, and for the international convention. So I had a team of guys in working on those 2 events, and of course Super Bowl was here in Indy, first time, and so we took off, went downtown last night, and it was crazy. It wasn't as crowded as I thought it would be, but Tuesday night, school night or whatever. But so anyways, we get down there and. In the Super Bowl Village, all this stuff, they got stage and concerts and zip lines and food and all this just kind of stuff, TV shows and NFL Network and ESPN and all this stuff kind of going on. And right in the midst of this hubbub, we're right downtown, right in the middle of it all, is St. John Church, which is one of the oldest churches in Indianapolis, huge, beautiful cathedral church. And they had their doors wide open. And they had volunteers standing on the store, inviting people in. It was like, come in out of the warm, get some hot chocolate. You can go talk to one of the priests over here. You want to ask questions. They had communion going on. You could take a tour of the sanctuary there, which it was beautiful. And it was kind of cool. It was like, here we are in the midst of this Super Bowl celebration, all this stuff going on, and right in the very middle of it, you had the gospel story. I was telling you guys earlier that if you walked around the sanctuary, like around the outside of it, they had these pictures on every post and these really, really nice classic painting, and it told the story of Christ from resurrection, from death to from birth to resurrection. And so, I mean, it's just kind of cool, you're in the midst of all this craziness, and we get all caught up into it. But at the end, it really doesn't really matter. And in the midst of all that, here's the gospel message, and it was just kind of cool to take it in. Wow. And so it was refreshing too.
Well, and Steve, you made the observation as he was explaining this in the pre-show. It sounded like the Stations of the Cross.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. That's taking a great advantage of a huge crowd being in town. Scott, last week we talked to Matt DePrez, who is very much into intergenerational ministry. He talked about some new discipleship techniques that they're doing with their students at Frontline Community Church. I know you're very, passionate about youth discipleship. You've worked on some great resources for students. Tell us about the initial WeFollow book, which came out, 3 years ago?
The first one, the series came. Yeah, there's probably a time frame, maybe three and a half years ago. What's funny is like I wrote that first book, and it really wasn't published until like a year later. So when you say 3 years ago, in my mind, it was more like 4.5 years ago, or whatever. So, yeah, I know Matt and doing a great job, innovative in their church ministries with the integrational ministry, and I know he has a heartbeat for discipleship and how that looks, and I have a heart for discipleship as well. And I've been up here almost 7 years now, which is mind-boggling in and of itself. But anyways, when I first came here to this job, one of the things we just began to look at is everything that we had to offer as a resource to the local church. And one thing that I really love about Jim Dunn, our general director that oversees this ministry, oversees us as we oversee these ministries, is his desire to stay true to the calling of Jesus to produce disciples. And that's what we really are called to do, right? So how are we going to equip, resource, train, encourage the local church at the very core to produce disciples? And so we began to look at that. And when I got here, the Wesleyan Youth Discipleship, if any of you guys have been in the in Wesleyan Church for any period of time, then you remember the old series Growing, Still Growing, more and more, is like the 3 little books. That was it. That's what they were using. That's what they were promoting, and that was actually published like in the 60s, maybe early 70s. It was the content of it was very good as far as what they were trying to accomplish. Of course, the package and the language and all that stuff was just way just not relevant. And so that one of our first initiatives was to really kind of look at that and say, okay, how can we bring this? We need to bring this up to date and make sure that we're offering our churches some relevant ministry materials on.
Now let me break in here real quick. Now,
yeah,
Heath. I mean, you contributed to this as well, right? I mean,
Well,
eventually.
Right. What started out is Scott did this whole kind of process. He did the initial WeFollow book, and then.
We did the first book, and it was actually an extension of my master's that I took at Indiana Wesleyan. My capstone project was this whole idea of looking at the adolescent development of the mental and psychological development of an adolescent through his teenage years, from that, like a secular kind of brain developmental, and parallel that with the spiritual concept. So what are they able to actually receive and actually conceptualize in their brain? Like, how does it work as they grow as far as their ages? And so that was kind of like the study of my capstone, and then the practical application was to create this discipleship program that would kind of parallel the adolescent behaviors and development of a 12-year-old or so. So we did the WeFollow, which was the first one, was the green book, and it's a 10-week lesson, kind of get the kid, a student, from conversion to spiritual growth. Out of that became this series, and so we Heath jumped in and helped us write some of those books. So it's a whole year-long series. So the first book is from conversion to spiritual growth, and it's like a 10-week lesson, and it's like you got a kid who's very young in their faith or just received Christ. Here's a great way to get them on the right path and kind of look at this spiritual growth. The second series is more of this life development. It's just discovering who you are, understanding God's call in your life, understanding your gifts, learning how to pray, doing all these kind of practical applications. It's actually a year long, and Heath was in on the very beginning of that. We met here at headquarters, and we did this whole scope and sequence and mapped it all out and divided it into sections. And Heath, you took part of that, and it's cool, man. It's cool to have that out there and see teams actually using it.
Right. One of the, that initial one, we did that in our youth group, and they loved it. And so the thing that I really love about these books is a kid can have it and they can do it on their own. You can do it in a group. And when we did the year-long series, those books really encourage the teen to have a mentor, because there are different activities in the book that say, hey, get your mentor and you're going to go and do this together, and really focusing on having somebody investing in your life as a student to kind of walk along with you. Now, that has kind of been the theme of your life, probably, like you said, the last 5 years, is this whole idea of follow. Yeah. And a lot of that kind of came to fruition last year. The Spiritual Formation Department sponsored the year-long Follow tour. It kind of went away from in the past we did 4 area conventions.
Yeah.
We did a year-long tour. Let me ask you, what was the thinking behind making that switch? And there are some huge success stories. Tell us some of those about the tour last year.
I don't know how many times I actually stopped and said, what were we thinking doing this tour?
Right.
But I think we held true to it. Again, I mean, the Wesleyan Church has this deep history in youth ministry, very rich, very productive, very effective. And so we were very cautious kind of going into this because we were looking at these regional youth conventions that's been around since the 70s. I mean, it's one of the staples of what we do, and we're actually looking at like flipping that up, changing the whole deal, flipping the script altogether on it. But what we wanted to do, we had some goals. We wanted to reach more students. We wanted to make sure that what we do as this collective body to reach more students, we wanted to help and do that in several ways, with cost reduction, with proximity geographically, able to get to a certain place a little easier than having to choose from 4 cities. So we wanted to do that. We believed in the message that we had of follow, and we can talk about that. But I think it really resonated with the students, and the response was incredible for that. We wanted to partner with the local church. When we do the regionals, we partner with hotel and conventions and have to do all this kind of work with them. Mm-hmm. And we get a director on site, and there is that team, but there was that missing element of working with our local church, allowing them to see this and to make this difference in their community. So to partner with the local church was just a great opportunity to do that. And then on top of that would be to raise up new leaders. We went from doing 4 regionals to doing 10 tour stops, and so each site had a whole new group of leaders, and so we had to kind of call on guys who hadn't been in a mix, who hadn't been involved, and so that was a great opportunity to kind of broaden our reach here, what we do at headquarters. So yeah, that was cool to do.
One thing that was exciting for me, I had the great opportunity to lead the tour stop at SWU, and that was another great thing the tour gave is SWU had the biggest student event that they'd ever had, close to 300 students, and it got kids on a lot of our campuses. Yeah. And so I know from our event, we used all ministry students to work at this convention. Kids who, normally, and they got to have an integral part and see this is what goes into making a convention happen. It's good job
training, man. I mean, it's really kind of good. We worked, I don't want to say exclusively, but we did have this working arrangement with Charlie Alcott, professor of youth ministry at IWU, mm-hmm. and his youth ministry class. And so you're talking about on-the-job training as far as how to do an event, some practical application. But on the flip side of that is just seeing the spiritual application of that too, and how to navigate through that and how to flow with the Spirit. I mean, students were a part of that. Students who are going to be ministers someday, to be able to experience that was a great opportunity. And I didn't mention that as another initiative for doing this is to create another partnership with our colleges to bring, we believe in our Wesleyan universities, colleges, and so we want students on their campus. So it was kind of cool to go to the colleges and do that as well.
Hey, Scott, I got a follow-up here. I want to kind of go back a little bit, if you don't mind, and talk a little bit about your master's work and the research that you did. I'm curious, were there any aha moments for you as you studied the development of adolescence and trying to take that then and marrying it with spiritual formation and discipleship? And were there these things or just something that stuck in your mind that was kind of revelatory?
Yeah, I mean, there were times when I would stop in the middle of that study or this kind of, you kind of go into it and say, yeah, I can write 10 lessons on discipleship. Yeah. It's okay. But if you want to put some depth to it and actually have a flow and some kind of rhythm to it that actually, looks at the developmental brain of an adolescent, it does make you pause. And there was times when I thought, man, I wish I would have known this when I was, in North Carolina. And because sometimes I wonder if I was expecting too much out of kids or not enough out of kids, mm-hmm. or, taking for granted that they grew up in the church or not really looking at the depths of the context of their family life. So you get this kid who accepts Christ as their Savior, and then they go home, and mom and dad has never been to church. They never even, and you just drop that kid in there and say, okay, go live that life. I mean, there were those times where, because all those come into play as far as the adolescent development of their the parental influence. So there was those moments where he says, "Man, I wish I would have had this kind of knowledge or some of this foresight back in the day." When I was in local church ministry.
Yeah, I know, Ed. One of the classes I had in psych development, you got to talking about just this whole thing of children and them asking Jesus into their heart, and then the prof was going over what he had asked some students. Well, now, so you said you had Jesus in your heart. What does that mean? And to hear those children describe that. And then all of a sudden you realize, wow, we've taken an adult concept here, and we have preached that to them, but they don't understand it at the level that we mean it.
Right, and then that comes into play as a youth minister of how you disciple. Like, okay, because you're assuming that they understand this at the level that you understand it, right?
Yeah.
And so some of the practical applications out of that would be on how you perceive that to be. For that student. And then there's all the other factors come into play, like are they in a Christian home? Are they getting that message? Or are they not in a Christian home? Have they never heard it before? It is an interesting concept to kind of to consider all those factors that come into play.
Scott, do you know off the top of your head just some of the statistics as far as decisions that were made throughout the tour, as far as kids, like we just said, giving their heart to Christ, called to ministry, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier. I think the theme really resonated with our with the students. You just kind of give glory to God on that, as far as laying it on our hearts and doing those things. We had, I think. And this off the top of my head, I actually have the report, and I probably should have pulled it up, but I think I'm pretty close on these numbers. But I think overall, we had over 6,000 students in attendance, which is very competitive to the regional events in years past. And for the first time doing it new, we were really pleased with that, because people wasn't sure exactly what it was and wasn't sure if it was going to be different from the quality of the regional events or whatever. So there's still a little apprehensions on that as well. Anyway, so we had just a little over 6,000 in attendance over the whole tour. 86% of those were responded to the gospel message in one capacity or another, which is a pretty high percentage for that. So that is pretty exciting when you begin to look at that type of deal. The breakdown was somewhere in the neighborhood of over 500 first-time decisions to follow Christ, over close to 800. Close to 1,200 rededications. We had close to 800 called into full-time ministry. And then we had well over 2,000 just make this commitment to follow Jesus. So this is Matthew 16:24 commitment to live their life following after Jesus. So now the key is, then the crucial step is a follow-up. And, we've done our very best to kind of track those. We have the response cards. We've been in touch with the churches. Right. Every youth pastor that if a student responded and we had that information, every youth pastor has been contacted with and has given that information to. And then we're working on, we got the WeFollow, of course, we want to put out there, and we got a new mentoring, especially for those who feel called into ministry. We have this new mentoring program just about finished up, and going to put it out there to try to help youth pastors, shape that call on a student's life, whether it's full-time vocational ministry or, they're going to be a teacher and God they're going to glorify God in that, or whatever that may be.
Now, all of this, man, to me, the exclamation point is in December at the International Convention, and it's going to still be follow. We've actually got the promo video we're going to show for this right quick.
Cool.
Let's do that.
This is a true story about a man worthy to follow. For 40 days and 40 nights, a pioneer walked deeper into the wilderness, into a land crawling with beast. His daunting mission set in motion to become a lifeline for humankind, for everyone imprisoned with no hope of returning home. A dark prince sought after the weary pioneer, tempting him with cunning delusions and lies the strongest among us would have failed. On high ground, the Dark Prince served his plan. The promise of power over all lands if you will just bow down and worship me. The snare, artfully set. As the sun flared and wind rushed, the fate of humankind was held exposed. But the greatest of mystery exists here. Atop that highest mountain, as dust cleared, the pioneer defiantly stood, rebuking the prince with powerful word. Away from me, Satan! Worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Victorious, the pioneer secured safe passage. Your life turned upside down. His call is open to any. Count the cost, come after me, and follow.
Sign me up. Where do I register? Let me ask you kind of three questions. One, one of the things I'm really excited about this year is Fuel, which is a youth pastors event that's this month, actually in 2 weeks. We're really trying to tie it into the convention. With this whole, and I hope I'm not giving away any secrets with this manifesto.
Way to go, Heath.
And I have never been more excited for, because I guess I'm thinking I know what the end is going to be, and talk a little. I mean, when we get done with this convention and you look back over the last, like I said, 5 or 6 years, where do you want our denomination to be, our denominational youth movement to be at the end of 2012 that we weren't through this whole follow movement? What would you like to see be the main difference in that?
Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Hold on.
TG muted.
I muted you because of the conversation going on during the video. Okay, you're back. Maybe.
Thanks for the mute. My Jim Dunn actually walked in. So
Dunn, huh?
The boss name.
I had to talk to him.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question, Heath. In fact, I kind of keep those things in front of me to help keep the vision there as far as like, okay, where do you want to be at the end of a season or whatever? And that's the goal. And so you kind of work your way backwards as far as of how do we want to get there. And for whatever reason, I do feel God just laying upon my heart to hammer this idea of discipleship, follow me. And maybe it's because I love reading Dallas Willard, spiritual formation guru. Just the guy's writing is incredible. And I was reading, I think it was The Great Omission, or his work on the commission. And I'm probably going to butcher this quote, but it's something to regards of the challenge in that is the ministry you're leading producing disciples. And it really got me to thinking about the things that I did in youth ministry, the things that we offer as far as training. And you look on our website and get all the ton of free resources that are available. At the end, are we really producing disciples? Are we producing this movement? Are we producing a gathering? Are we producing a large group? Are we producing this hype? The gospel you're sharing, is it producing disciples? And that, for whatever reason, for the last 2 years, that has just really kind of stuck in my craw. It's just really challenged me to take a look at that. So at the end, Heath, when it's all said and done, I hope that we have youth pastors that are committed to making disciples, and we understand what that truly means, to be a follower of Jesus. And back over the summer, at the beginning of the summer of last year, I read Cal Idleman's book, Not a Fan. And that dude was like, he was inside my head.
Yeah.
Everything that I was thinking of as far as the follow tour in this international convention was spelled out in this book. And so I said, this guy is the guy that has to come to Fuel. And Cal is a teaching pastor at Southeastern Christian College, Southeastern Eastern Christian Church there in Louisville. Speaks to tens of thousands of people every Sunday, and he has his book, Not a Fan. And the whole idea is moving yourself from being this fan of Jesus, like this person who knows about him, who likes him, who has received him, to actually being a follower of Jesus. And how does that really look? And so the challenge at Fuel, which I'm really excited about, Fuel is shaping up to be one of our largest youth gathering training events ever. I shouldn't say ever, as long as I've been involved.
Right.
And registration is through the roof. People are signed up, and we're going to have a great time. The lineup's going to be phenomenal. The guys were in this weekend, and we were working on that. So I'm really excited about that. And we got this end challenge that's really hopefully going to inspire and encourage us all to produce disciples. Kyle, I've been in conversation with him, and just the whole idea is to speak to us as youth leaders, to really check ourselves to see, are we truly followers, and let's have a measuring stick of our life, and see, do we truly follow after Jesus in every area. So he's going to challenge us on that front, and then the second time he's going to share is going to translate or transcend into our ministry. Well, if that's the case, where is it showing up in the things that we do on the week-to-week basis, or a monthly basis, or quarterly basis, or however? How is producing disciples showing up in our youth ministries? And then we're creating these moments of dialogue, just conversations around the table, to be able to kind of put into practice some of the things that we're going to be learning. So, and there's a lot of fun stuff, a lot of giveaways. I'm not sure if we can speak to that right now.
Yeah, do it, man.
We got a ton of stuff. Ross from Ross Pro Prints is our T-shirt guy, and he has a company up in Marion. His site's linked on our website, wesleyanyouth.com. And anyways, he's giving away free Follow 12 International Youth Convention T-shirts he's giving away two to youth group of any size. So you can win a youth group for your entire youth group. You can win a T-shirt for your entire youth group. For the Follow Tour, for the Follow International Convention. Wow. We have Cal Eidelman's book. We're going to give away a copy of that for everyone attending. We got a couple other surprises we got in there. That's great. But we're also giving away youth ministry grants. And we thought about this and about spending money and buying stuff. And we said, well, how about, we look at some of our churches and say, you can win a $1,200 youth grant. And you can win this. You take it back to your church and you can spend out however you want in your youth ministry. And so we're giving away three $1,200 youth grants over the 2 days that we're going to be down in Louisville. So we're excited about that, plus a bunch of other stuff that we don't want to quite give away yet, but it's going to be good days.
Scott, just real quick, just from a functional, practical point of view, I'm at the website, and where do they need to look for the giveaway of the T-shirts?
That's going to be if it's not up there, I said Ross, his last name escapes me, which I hate, but he's a great guy. Ross is Pro Prints is the name of his company up in Marion, and I'm pretty sure his link is on our website. If not, then we'll get it there for sure. Okay. We're going to give those away. It'll be a drawing from our registration that we're going to give away at the Fuel event.
All right, very good.
And then the last giveaway I want to talk about, Scott has been gracious enough and to give away to our listeners the complete set, a total of 13 books, 10 weeks with the initial iFollow book, and then a whole year's worth through the 12 iFollow books. And so the way we're going to give those away is between now and February 8th. We'll go to 9:30 a.m. February the 8th, next Wednesday. If you mention us on Twitter, @Techology, or if you tag us on Facebook, you can do both. You can enter twice. You'll be entered to win this entire set of youth discipleship resources, which are phenomenal. And
can we talk for just a minute about the spiritual formation department and how awesome? I mean, of all the departments that the Wesleyan Church has, in my humblest of opinions, they have got the best team of people to develop and put out resources. Yes. They look great.
Right.
They're designed well.
Yes.
They're beautiful. I mean, everything about your guys is, you guys you are kind of lumped in with the Wesleyan Church website, but it really, the spiritual formation department has its own feel to it.
Yeah.
And you guys just have the best. I mean, even on the Wesleyan Youth stuff, as I'm looking through here for resources, you guys give away like themes for youth camps.
Yeah.
You guys are
a lot of free resources
on the stuff that comes out of there.
And Jeremy Summers just sent me some young adult resources that they're putting out, and just like you said, phenomenal feel to it, phenomenal look to it, and it's actually
Yeah, and this isn't just patronizing.
No,
We
what
have,
I'm saying, I have had this conversation.
That's
with you.
right.
We
We've
bought the
all
company.
had this conversation.
We've had this conversation among ourselves, saying, "Wow." And I mean, I don't mean to be harsh here, but what if every department in the church put out or had such a good eye for materials and for resources? You guys are just stellar on that, and you deserve to pat yourselves on the back.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate that. And a lot of that starts at the very top with Jim, just setting that vision and giving us the green light to be able to have creative control.
Well, then pat
as
him
far
on
as
the back. Okay, let's pat somebody on the back. Somebody's back.
pat Jim on the back. Jim has been a great leader, and one of the things that we, as the whole team, our passion is to give back to the local church. We understand what we're here for. We're here to serve the local church, and that's been the motto since day one, since I've been here almost 7 years ago. And it's like, well, okay, so what can we do to give back to the local church? And when you have that you got Jim kind of leading that vision and kind of giving us the green light on being cutting edge on some things, and Corey Pence doing the website design. Corey
does a great job. Corey has a great eye.
Yes, he does.
Oh man,
he has a great eye for design, for layout. He's the kind of guy that you want. I mean, beautiful stuff that he's putting in, and just the fact, like, okay, so I know this isn't like necessarily under your department or your eye, but like the Lent series that comes out, that you guys put out every year, Spring Life. The fact that you tailor that and have a youth track for that, for Sunday school lessons, for adults, for children, like you guys have just got it together. And I like, this is the department that I was talking to my mom yesterday, and we were talking about what was going to go on the show today. She was asking me, and I said, it's just a delight to talk with these guys, because in my opinion they just do a phenomenal job.
We try to be holistic. We try to look at the Lent of Spring Life, and we want to go from the top down or all across the board as far as adult ministries, children's, youth. And again, and I'm not saying this because he's my boss. It's just the vision of Jim to be able to say, let's be holistic in what we do. Let's have quality, and let's serve the local church. And it's been a great environment to work in. Yeah,
it's just fantastic. Man. You guys just do great.
Scott, I know you're going to stay on with us. Can you tell everybody where you're at on Twitter and Facebook, and how they can find you and contact you and on the Twitter?
Absolutely. I get scared with Twitter, man. I'm not too sure exactly. I'm kind of new to it. He actually got me going. It's Scott Simmons 70. At Scott Simmons 70 is the Twitter, and just try to keep up to date on that. And I got to go in there and check and see who I'm supposed to block and all that kind of stuff. But at Scott Simmons 70, Facebook is just Scott Simmons, and then we have Wesleyan Youth page, and we try to do the highlights of the ministry and the free resources. Every time the website's updated, we try to put that out on. And we have at Wesleyan Youth is the other Twitter feed, and that's kind of more of a the website's updated. There's free resources. There's a great article. There's all this kind of stuff, and we kind of feed those through the Facebook page and the Wesleyan Youth Twitter as well. So you can check it out at Wesleyan Youth.
Well, and speaking of giveaways, in the chat room, Travis Shannon has joined us from Wyoming, and he said that you're so generous you gave away some fantasy football wins this season. So.
Dude, I got stomped this year. I can't even defend it. I can't even. What am I going to say? I can't.
So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, Scott. You're going to stay on with us and just jump in on the discussion, and let's move on.
Well, let's get to
Download of the Week.
Our download of the week is Ultimate Windows Customizer. If you're a person that likes to customize the way that Windows 7 looks and feels, we recommend this. Now, what I did, I like to at least try software out before I recommend it, so I went to the website, I downloaded it. One of the things that aggravates me when you go to these download sites is sometimes they kind of hide the download, so scroll to the bottom and just click download, because they'll try to get you to do a toolbar and all this other kind of stuff. Once I hit the download, everything was fine, and it comes by way of CNET, so it's been vetted by CNET and really through Revision 3. And Veronica Belmont, this is one thing that she recommends. I didn't tweak it a whole lot. To be honest with you, I don't spend a lot of time in Windows 7. I'm more in either Ubuntu or Mac.
Some of the things that it does, though.
Oh, you can customize your start menu, your dock.
What does that mean? Like what order stuff is in, or what it looks like?
Look, the feel. You can customize short cuts on your desktop, and so what this is an interface. So instead of going to Control Panel and trying to, customize your wallpaper, customize the dock that way, or a theme, this is a control panel that brings all of those things. So you just hit the control panel. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, and again, I saw it on Revision 3. It was a recommendation that they were making.
Could we summarize it by saying, make Windows look like a Mac?
No, you can't do that. All right. Let's move on to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
Well, I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
We got into a little bit of trouble with the previous project, and my father, who's a professor, was not too happy with the prospect of me getting kicked out of school. Zuckerberg likes to make fun of my dad for this, but we're still very close. Joe Green, former roommate of Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, explaining why he turned down a 2004 invitation to be part of Facebook's founding. Source, Good Morning America.
When a culture attempts to suppress the dimension of ultimate mystery and to close the doors to transcendent truth, it inevitably becomes impoverished and falls prey, as the late Pope John Paul II so clearly saw, to reductionist and totalitarian readings of the human person and the nature of society. Pope Benedict XVI, voicing concerns to American bishops that there are trends in the U.S. culture that are, quote, a threat not just to Christian faith, but also to humanity itself, close quote. Source, CNS News.
Employees work excessive overtime, in some cases 7 days a week, and live in crowded dorms. Some say they stand so long that their legs swell until they can hardly walk. Underage workers have helped build Apple products, and the company's suppliers have improperly disposed of hazardous waste and falsified records, according to company reports and advocacy groups that within China are often considered reliable, independent monitors. Charles DeHig and David Barboza reporting in their New York Times article, "In China, human costs are built into an iPad." Source, The New York Times.
I had a really good time tonight.
Yeah, me too.
I really like you a lot. You're not like the other guys.
I really like you a lot too. You look so pretty tonight.
My parents aren't home right now, if you want to come inside for a little bit.
Hey, don't do it. This decision could define the rest of your life. I know she's cuddly. Look at me, I'm cuddly.
Nah, you're worth the wait. This doesn't feel right.
Just a minute.
Now this feels right.
Matthew, I knew you'd love that video.
So well done. Let's just talk about the antithesis of what I was saying earlier about the spiritual formation.
I knew you'd react that way. The reason I included this got over 250,000 hits, and this is a big campaign, Day of Purity. And
when is the Day of Purity? Did I miss it?
Yeah, I think it's January. It's February 14th. So
can we just go on record that we are in favor of purity?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's
perhaps
not
a day of purity
behind this that's the problem.
It's the execution of the idea.
And so, what are we asking or saying to our teenagers that instead of that I don't know, like 14-year-olds. Let's get married. Now that feels right. At 14, we'll get
Yeah, they
married.
did. They did get married kind of young. But also, he wasn't very excited about it. It's like, this feels right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm the first
Wonderful.
to admit, I hesitated back and forth about the video, but here I'm going to defer to what Steve just said, and that is, we certainly, the concept behind this, we are in full support of Day of Purity and abstinence. And if you go to the website, I might have linked you to a couple websites here. I did. And some of them, one of these websites has some good resources, very good resources, statistics about the benefits of abstinence, things of this nature. And so you can get some resources there from that website.
I remember it may have been on a movie, or it may have been an advertisement on a show, but it was a girl, and it showed her life of, in that moment, making the decision to be intimate with her boyfriend, and then it fast forwarded 18 years and showed her life and showed her son getting arrested and just kind of the downfall. And then they put up a link at the end of this video, and I'm like, I clicked on the link, and after I went through about 10 pages of this website, in very fine print on about the 12th page, there was one line, abstinence works too, something to that effect. But it went through every form of contraception, every form of having safe sex, and it gave absolutely hardly any mention of abstinence. And it is statistically proven throughout history that abstinence is the only 100% way not to get pregnant before you're married, not to, there's a lot of emotional and spiritual and physical baggage that comes along with being sexually active, and abstinence, 100% effective against all that.
Well, again, if you want some good resources, this will the website there will help you with that as well.
I hate to be the only one to point out, but if the gospel's true, it's not 100% effective.
Well, Steve just earned his paycheck for this.
Well.
Except for one instance in history.
But my guess is this: if your kids try to pull the miraculous thing on you,
I've already gone on record about
there was an angel.
Dad, it was crazy dream, man. Crazy dream.
It was crazy.
Hey, let's jump into this New York Times article. The tech world was blowing up with this.
Every year. This is not the first time that this has come up. It's about the Chinese factories.
Yes.
This comes up year after year, right at the review time.
This is different, Tej, in that what they have are people that were willing to go on record, and some of the numbers are pretty alarming. I mean, if I printed out, if you haven't read this article, I printed it out. It's going to take about 10 to 12 full pages here, and the reason that this has received press like it hasn't in the past is because they come out with so many details.
Right.
And the factory is Foxconn in China.
And let me also just state, Apple catches, because they're the big name here, they catch a lot on this, but everybody.
Well, okay. So fourth quarter profits for Apple were.
Well, I know. So I'm not trying to defend
$13.1 billion.
I'm not trying to
They have
defend.
profit margins that no other company in the tech sector
I'm not trying to defend
sector
what's
has.
going on there. And I agree with everybody that says with those kind of profits, what about bringing manufacturing, to America? What if there was a way to do that, and if products ended up costing more, maybe that would either eat into those profits a little bit or end up costing us a little bit more. I would be all for that. I think that's a great thing. So I'm not trying to say that this is okay what's happening here. I'm just trying to let you know, don't jump on the bandwagon that's it's Apple's.
Okay, I know you have a comment, Steve, but I'm going to ask you. You were the first one to jump on this, Matthew. So is this unfair that Apple's being singled out?
No. Well, yes. It's not unfair that they're being talked about. It's unfair that they're being singled out in an article like this. When you've got Microsoft, who also produces the Xbox and all their these cameras that we're using today for our podcast in the same factories. When you've got Amazon, who's producing the Kindle
I've got a list of all the companies here, but now go back to profit margin. No company pulls profit margins like Apple.
Nobody else sells volume like Apple either. Like if there were as many Xboxes sold as iPads, right? Then
or
there
iPhones.
may be that kind of
Okay,
profit
but
margin
that
for Microsoft.
doesn't diminish the argument he's making. The one making the most profit under these adverse circumstances is Apple.
Right, and I get that.
And didn't I read too here within the last month or so a newspaper article about one whole factory that produces Apple products? I'm not sure.
Foxconn. That's what this is about. It's
they
just
were going to leap
Foxconn.
to their. They were promising a mass suicide if working conditions weren't at least marginally improved, so that they'd be tolerable.
Right. I'm not saying that this is right. I'm just trying to say let's not focus in on what. But I see what you're saying too.
But
what about the
for
Christian
me, this is
principle?
like slavery. You know, you can't say, but they're the only ones. It's something you have to have zero tolerance for, in my opinion. So what do we do about it? Well, we should be writing. We should be agitating and being activists for what we truly believe. And in future, now that we know this, our buying decisions should be guided by it. I think that's
If that's the case, though, everything that we're sitting in front of right now, we should not have it all.
All right, here's the point. And TG wants to go back to products that are made at Foxconn, so let me read the list. These are the companies that are having products built there. Acer, Amazon, Apple, Asus, Barnes & Noble, Cisco, Dell, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, IBM, Lenovo, Microsoft, Motorola, Netgear, Nintendo, Nokia, Panasonic, Samsung, Sharp, Sony, Vizio.
I mean,
and these
what
are
I'm
all
talking
made
about
at
is
one factory?
Yes, all at
everybody
Foxconn.
uses Foxconn.
Foxconn has like 200,
It
300,000
is
employees.
I need to get educated.
They
on
live.
that. I have
They
to
live on the
confess
work
ignorance
site.
on-
They live on the work site. Remember the whole textile mill and in the South here. You'd have the company store and the company house.
That's exactly what it is.
That's what Foxconn is.
They got their own restaurants there on the
Where?
campuses.
Hey, can I ask a question about Foxconn? Where is that? Where's their base? Is that here or
it's located in
overseas?
multiple places in China.
It's
but
in
Shenzhen,
China.
China is the main.
Now, Foxconn is expanding to Brazil. It is expanding to. There's another country here in the article. They're building 4 or 5 factories in Brazil.
Who's highlighting this? Where does this article come from?
New York Times.
New York Times.
But
I give you the
May I
link.
just say, New York Times is a well-established liberal voice. I applaud them for taking on something that's been,
Yeah, it's been underreported in the past. It has been reported in the past. Let's not say that this is the first time we've heard about this. Every year, Apple does an internal review of this kind of stuff, and every year at that time, this story comes up. It's come up bigger this time around. Like you said, there's been more details on it than there have in the past. But what do we like if we take that stance and say, okay, we need to now make our decisions based on this? Like, how do we vet that all the way to the end? Everything on this table, that Lenovo computer, these Mac computers, even this soundboard, everything probably comes from a place where there could be that level of abuse. What do we do?
Right, and I agree. I don't know that y'all said anything I disagree with during this discussion, but I
disagree
think,
with that.
I think, though, what I would say with Apple,
you weren't paying attention.
If Apple went to the forefront and said, listen, we're not using them anymore. We're going here. We're going to build them in America. It's going to cost more. It's going to create some issues.
Why do they have to do that?
But listen, but if Apple, who would you listen to? If Apple said we're not using Foxconn anymore until they improve, if they did it, or if Lenovo,
hold on.
came out and said, hey, we're not.
Let me ask you a question, Keith.
Yeah.
Keith. All right. So what you're saying is you are kind of going on a Christian principle of whom much is given, much is required.
Yes, I'm saying Apple, because of who they are.
Okay.
They have
the voice.
There's a little. They have the voice. They have the platform.
I couldn't agree more.
If they came out and said that, I guarantee you. I don't make a lot of guarantees in life. I guarantee you, if Apple went up and said we're not using Foxconn anymore, every single one of those companies would get out as well.
But wouldn't it be better if Apple would say we're giving Foxconn X number of months to get it fixed.
Yes,
that's what they do every year annually. That's what these reviews are about.
Well,
and
have a date certain.
They've cited Foxconn before, and the thing for Foxconn is they're an independent party who gets a contract from this, so they do bow to that a little bit and say, okay, if we say you need to improve in these areas, like they do that. The thing is, how much does Apple? And they do. You're right. They have the voice to try.
Well, I appreciate what Matthew said. If you read the article, what these reporters are alleging is that Apple does know of other abuses and they choose to turn a blind eye to it. Now that's so you have to know that's the nature of this article.
But that would also mean that all those other companies would know as well.
I said I'm thinking of the worker in China. To pull out that much commerce could potentially hurt millions of Chinese, as it would disrupt any. As much benefit as it would do for us, it could do massive
no question
disadvantages there. So my point is, if Apple came out and said there's some date certain things, and we're going to have, I don't know what the agency would be, a United Nations agency, World Hope, anybody come in and look at it and say they're going to verify whether these improvements have been made or not, and if they're not, then we're moving our operations elsewhere. I think then you would see real change in Foxconn and the subsequent change in these other organizations.
I mean, to me, the best solution for everyone is, and this is where it comes back to Foxconn, because we haven't laid any blame on them.
Well, Foxconn is known to be owned and controlled by Communist Party officials. I mean, that's every report that comes out about them there.
That's business in general in China, isn't it?
Right. It is. Yeah. So what you're going to have to do is really be this tough and have an independent verification system set up in place so that it can no longer be dependent solely upon their discretion.
I have to be honest here. I have used Matthew, and I intentionally used him. I knew how he would come out of the gate. Now let me say this. Now I'm going to sound like the Apple fan. Apple is the only company that does internal audits.
Right.
They are the only company that has put public disclosure to all of their suppliers, and in their disclosures of their suppliers, they've also documented everyone that is not in compliance. Okay, and so all these other companies that I read, none of them do what Apple does already. I think Apple is bringing pressure, and let me say this: I want to be fair. In this article, they quote an anonymous source from BSR, the Business of a Better World, and this is the person that says Apple's turning a blind eye. The CEO wrote a rebuttal letter to the New York Times, which was published. Aaron Kramer says, I don't know who your source was, but your source is wrong. And Apple is one of the very few companies that is bringing pressure to Foxconn.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So we do. I mean, it is something that we've got to talk about and figure out what to do. There certainly is a solution here somewhere, and I think, like you said, Steve, it's not totally pulling all manufacturing, because that would, like you said, that would destroy an entire economy. It's just trying to figure out how to, and I like your idea, how to properly vet these things, be sure that they are being carried through, and like Tony said, Apple does put pressure on this every year. They do, and to renew those contracts, Foxconn has before in the past done things to improve conditions. It's just let's pick up the pace on that a little bit.
Yeah. Here's my proposal. We have Scott Simmons here.
Yes.
Let's put Spiritual Formation Department in charge of verification.
Get it off our plate and on
theirs. They don't have anything going on this year.
I don't think we can compete with Apple. That's for sure.
I do think it's fair to say, to whom much is given, much is required, and Apple. They have to continue to step this up, because they are the ones that could cripple Foxconn.
Right.
I was going to ask that question, Tony. Like, what about Foxconn and all these companies that they produce for? What would be the percentage that Apple has? I mean, is it more than half?
100% of what Apple produces at Foxconn. The list I read to you are percentages. So I think Lenovo. Don't quote me on this, but Lenovo, like less than 50% of what they make is made there. And all these companies, it's varying degrees. Apple, 100%. So any Apple product that you have came out of Foxconn.
Right. But out of everything that Foxconn does, what's the percentage of Apple versus Samsung or whoever else that they're producing stuff?
That I don't know.
I'm just wondering how much, if they flex their muscle, would it make a dent in everything? Because Apple could be this huge beast, but if you put all these others together, it could be as big as Apple.
But here's the thing, Scott. Apple is a device company now, and so after the fourth quarter, their profits were $13.1 billion. They did almost $50 billion worth of revenue, and they are the number one. Apple is the number one producer now for tech products. They're the number one. And so the New York Times article, the reason they're coming down so hard on Apple is that if they pulled out of Foxconn, it would it would have a huge impact on Foxconn.
Yeah.
So a great percentage of what they produce there. Now, here's the reality. Because 100% of what Apple has is produced at Foxconn, Apple would be dead in the water if something happened at Foxconn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Now, there's goodness, because we're simplifying this a little bit too much, because not everything is made at Foxconn. Like displays are assembled at like an LG assembly plant.
Right.
All those parts are shipped to Foxconn. What Foxconn does is put the pieces of the puzzle together to make the product. All the individual components are all made from different suppliers.
Right.
And so you mentioned earlier that Apple also, not only just with Foxconn, but there's this kind of stuff that can happen even from on the supplier level. They disclose who their suppliers are to say, okay, we get our touch screen. And when you talk, okay, so let's talk about the touch screen on an iPhone. There are so many components when you talk about that. There's the screen that actually shows the picture, but then you've got the touch-enabled layers that go into that of glass. All these different parts come from different places, and they talk about where that comes from, so they bring a little bit more ability to look into these places and to see is there what kind of business stuff's going on here? Is it shady? Is it good stuff? What's happening in a way that nobody else does? But Foxconn is like the assembler of the puzzle. That's what they do. So I don't know, it would be a huge hit if something happened and Apple wasn't able to produce there, but they still have all the components from different
But
places.
also, there's a lot of engineering for Apple. So if you remember in Steve Jobs' biography, one of the things he takes on the Obama administration about is that we need 30,000 engineers, and we have to go to China to get them. And so I would think that some of that.
About Foxconn specifically, I don't know.
But I'm
all
saying
the different pieces and parts that make up the whole.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I would imagine that out of that 30,000, some of them are Foxconn related.
But still, even in product design, none of that happens at Foxconn. They make the blueprints.
Right. No, I'm not taking issue with that.
In California, to say this is how we want the product to look, and then they send that to. Because everything, the stainless steel band around the phone is produced somewhere. Someone makes just that, and then they ship that to Foxconn to put together.
So it's a lot like the auto industry, right? We have plants all over Indianapolis that make certain parts, ship those to the assembly line.
Yeah, good analogy, Scott.
Great, yeah.
Okay, well, now we've spent a lot of time on that story, and I planned on it. So we just, real quick, I thought Pope Benedict's comments were fascinating, and one of the things that has concerned me in the evangelical movement at large and in Christianity in America is we're stripping mystery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's all science. Get it under the microscope, and what about the mysterious aspects of things that we don't know and cannot know? And isn't Steve? I'd ask you this question. Isn't one of the failures of modernity in that all the questions have not been able to be answered?
Well, they're impossible to be answered. And if you try to answer them only using that grid, what he says happens. Yes. We're reduced to bare material, and you and I become nothing more than a commodity. And it's who gets then to set what the commodity is worth and how it ought to be employed that becomes the driving factor in the culture. You have to have mystery in order to make room for God.
Let me ask you this, Scott.
And human dignity.
Yeah.
I go back to youth ministry, being a youth pastor for 97 years. I found myself as a youth pastor guilty of trying to eliminate mystery.
Yeah.
Because I wanted it to be. I wanted to have the answers. I wanted it to be factual. I wanted to eliminate the guesswork for the student.
I totally agree. I think one of the myths of youth ministry, maybe ministry in general, leading ministry, is having all the answers. It's like, or spoon feeding your students what they should believe versus them owning their own faith and discovering it, and you being this representative of the truth and kind of keeping them in those parameters. But a lot of times we are guilty of exactly telling them everything, giving them all the answers, or trying to think or create or feeling like we need to have all the answers. And sometimes we get scared because you have this idea of how you want the student to believe or how they want them to receive the gospel,
right?
And then sometimes they don't always go that route, and it makes you nervous.
And look at the orthodox tenets of our faith and theology, the Trinity. I don't care how you can explain that till you're blue in the face, but there's mystery involved in that. The incarnation. Absolutely. I mean, it's an essential part of our faith, and I think that Pope Benedict. And
isn't mystery the very bedrock of faith? I mean, to say like you can't have faith without a bit of mystery. They have to go together.
All right, here we won't have time to really get into Joe Green's comment. Joe Green was the guy who was offered to get in on the ground level of Facebook and turned it down because they got in trouble for some other adventures, and his daddy really didn't want him messing with that Zuckerberg guy.
Yeah, talk about. You think you're being a good parent. He's being a bad influence on you.
Can't you hear the parental? You stay away from Zuckerberg. He's nothing but trouble.
He's going to get you nowhere.
And now they're talking about an IPO for Facebook and Zuckerberg. I mean, Joe Green could have been a multi-billionaire.
Yeah. Here's the great thing.
There was a somewhere
Joe
from the
Green, the great thing, though, is every year at Christmas, he shows up for Christmas. Dad, I would have got you something bigger, but...
all right, here. Let's talk about the future. February 22nd, we have Tom Arminger, CEO of World Hope, will be with us. On the 29th of February, we have Joan Rampey. She's going to come in studio and talk about her week in Haiti, and Greg Edmonds is going to join us for about 5 or 10 minutes via Skype. Cool. So just give us an update. We'll be praying with him. Nice. April the 4th, we have Wayne Schmidt. He's going to join us and talk to us about his book. Come on, just left me. Ministry Velocity. Thank you. April the 25th, Mark Wilson. His book, Filled Up, Poured Out. Is supposed to, he thought, we put on Facebook, hit press today or yesterday, so Lord willing, we'll have a copy in our hands, and Mark's always a great guest.
Yeah, awesome.
And we've got other requests out there, and know that by next week we'll have others that we can tell you about. All right, Scott, one more time, we want to thank you for being with us and tell our listeners how they can find you.
Yeah, hey, thanks. Thanks for inviting me, man. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys. You can find me at Scott Simmons 70. That's the Twitter. Email is simmons@wesleyan.org. And our main website is wesleyanyouth.com. So you can get anything and everything for Wesleyan Youth Ministries, all free. Well, the iFollow costs a little bit, but most of the resources, 90% of the resources on that website is free. wesleyanyouth.com.
All right, Heath.
You can go to heathmulligan.com or chaseyourline.com and then find me on Twitter and all those other places.
Brother Steve.
Google Plus, pastorses@gmail.com, where if you search for the phrase world's oldest living child, my picture will appear.
Listen, there were people in the chat room cheering that you were back with us this week,
yes,
Steve.
Absolutely.
You have a cult following.
You do.
Right. I paid them, and I'll have to pay them
all right,
more.
Matthew.
You can find me at matthewtg.com. That's it.
All right. Find me at facebook.com/AKC64. And if you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play your comments on the air. Goodbye, everybody.
Sayonara.
Adios.
Amigo.
Auf Wiedersehen.